and I told them what I wanted to do. I don't even know if it could be done. And they confirmed that, yeah, you could probably do it, but they also said that nobody in the department had licensed a distillery in modern times. So they would need a couple months to figure it out.
Welcome into another edition of the Hops and Spirits Bar Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Green, and we're in the midst of Whiskey Weeks. We've already had a few episodes. We've talked with Dan Kidd, Heavy Bourbon, to kick it all off. Chef Weta Michael to talk about bourbon and restaurants. And then last week was a flight night with Barrel Bourbon and Stelm Spirits. And we're here talking and drinking some more bourbon. We have Guy Rayhorst with us from Great Lakes Distillery here. He'll be joining us in a second. If you're watching, he's technically already here. But don't forget, Whiskey Weeks 2021 is presented by Knows Your Bourbon. That's right, Knows Your Bourbon. It's how you can learn to pick up those nuanced smells, aromas, everything. Just gives you a little extra help. There's 18 of the most commonly found aromas in bourbon in their original nosing kit. They even have an expansion pack. They also got a lot of other goodies. It's Knows Your Bourbon, N-O-S-E, like your nose. You can find them on Etsy or knowsyourbourbon.com. I highly recommend it. It's helped me out a whole lot as I have dove into the deep end with bourbon, and it's definitely made me better at this. And like I said, we're in the midst of Whiskey Weeks, and we have Guy Rayhorst, the founder of Great Lakes Distillery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Guy, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool when I was kind of reading up and figuring out what I wanted to ask you, just to see all the work that you put in. And some of the work that you guys do is what we're going to open and pop first is the Still and Oak straight bourbon whiskey that comes in at 86 proof. Want to talk a little bit about it, because I got a nice little flavor there right before we went on, and I was pleasantly impressed with it.
Good, glad. So our bourbon is not a traditional recipe. We actually use a rather high malt content to it, 22% malt, 11% rye, and 67% corn. So it's a little unusual in that regard. But we're a young distillery. We've been around for 20 years, almost 20 years now. First distillery in Wisconsin, and we feel that just trying to make what others are already making doesn't make sense for us. So we try to do a little different grain bill in every recipe we do. Try to make our spirits a little different.
Well, I was gonna say I kind of got that right, because like I said, I didn't get that typical what I call burn from right off the get-go. I got that nice, I guess it's from the malt, the little bit of honey on the palate was very pleasant.
Yeah, it's got a nice long finish, and it's a very nice and slow and pleasant finish to it.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of on the lighter side. Is that coming from the grain bill you use, and I guess a little bit of the age as well?
Yeah, a little bit of the age as well. It's a straight whiskey. It's a straight bourbon, which means it's got to be at least 2 years old. And right now we're pushing around 3 years with most of it, but trying to put some barrels away for even longer aging. But it's tough because, frankly, it sells pretty fast as it is. So it's a delicious little bourbon, and people are appreciating it.
Well, no, I was gonna say that's the only downside to any bourbon is it takes time no matter what. And if this is at 2 to 3 years old, and I love the uniqueness. I think that's probably what helps set you all apart is kind of that uniqueness, and you crafted something your own. You talked about it. You've been around almost 20 years. You guys launched in 2004. How difficult was it to launch in Wisconsin back then? Because not everyone was thinking about it like they are today, or
right.
have the clear path that you have kind of created for them that we'll talk a little bit about as well.
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a challenge. We had when I called the Department of Revenue, who in Wisconsin regulates our alcohol, and I told them what I wanted to do. I don't even know if it could be done, and they confirmed that yeah, you could probably do it, but they also said that nobody in the department had licensed a distillery in modern times, so they would need a couple months to figure it out. So And they did, fortunately, and we were able to get producing as the first distillery operating in Wisconsin since Prohibition.
I was gonna say, was that weird to hear that they're like, well, we could do it, but we're not sure how to do it.
Yeah, yeah. It was, but also understandable. I mean, regulations being what they are, it's there's prohibition through a big log jam into what you could and couldn't do, and we both needed to figure out our way through that. So.
Well, and you kind of have this entrepreneurial spirit as well, and it seems like you're willing to tackle those obstacles because you were a founder of kind of a high-tech manufacturer before this. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I owned. Owned and operated a optical disc manufacturing facility. So we manufactured CDs, DVDs. In about 2002, I realized that the internet was getting faster and cheaper, and there may not be a lot of need for optical discs going forward. So decided I should probably get out of it and figure something else out. So, and that something else happened to be distilling.
Well, and I was reading too that I guess was your first thought. Did it come over drinks at a place where you're kind of thinking, oh, maybe there's a reason why there's no distilleries, and then you realize no, they just no one's done it. No one took the dive.
Yeah, I often joke that sometimes the best way to start a business is to be ignorant, and certainly we were certainly that. I mean, we had no idea what to expect. I did. That story's true. I was sitting at a restaurant and realized there were local beers, even local wines, but there were no local spirits. And in fact, the closest spirits were from Kentucky, and it was pretty much bourbon, and everything else was coming out of Europe. And thought to myself, wonder if that could be done on a local basis, just like a craft brewery. And that got me curious enough to start digging into it, and discovered that yes, it could be done. There were not many doing it at that point. There were about 30 craft distilleries in the U.S., I think, in 2004. And so I just, like I said, plunged forward with a certain amount of ignorance, and fortunately came out on the other side where we're still in business today. So.
Well, and you kind of talk about it, plunging forward. I mean, basically, you almost had to. If the analogy is you're going through the rainforest, you basically had to have your machete out to kind of clear the path, because you guys couldn't even do tastings. Like, that was illegal. You couldn't sell technically. So how was it, kind of launching a business with, a good, hand tied behind your back, but also working to get it untied and truthfully end up helping more in the process as well?
Sure. We, so when we started, one of the first things I started working on with the state's wine industry, because a lot of them were interested in distilling, but one of the things we were working on was trying to get tasting rooms permitted for distilled spirits. It was not legal at the time. We could not sample our own spirits at our own facility. Spent several years working with them, and eventually realized, well, I am kind of one of the only distillers. I think at that point we had two more, and they were also on board with the idea. So it took us about 4 years, though, to convince the legislature to change regulations so that we could actually sell our product in our distillery. When we did, it permitted us to sell bottles by the glass in a drink, and also samples for tastings. So it worked out good. Once we finally got it done, it's been a good law ever since.
I was going to say, and it's something that people, nowadays it's second nature to have that anywhere, but that's not the way it was, because like you mentioned, Prohibition, a lot of weird laws that hamstring a lot of people, and it's just it's very interesting when you dive into that side. Is that kind of what also got you interested in being part of the Distilled Spirits Council and the Craft Distillers Advisory Council, because you were a founding member of that? Yeah.
I mean, over the years, we've I was very involved in efforts in Wisconsin to get, besides the tasting room law changed, but also tastings in stores, which we could not do prior. There's been a few other things. There's, was an attempt to raise excise tax on us on the state level. And with the help of Discus, we were able to eventually be victorious on all those fronts. So it's been definitely a good thing to get involved with the industry, trade associations, trade groups. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them, frankly.
Well, and I was going to say, especially when you think about the tastings at liquor store, when you're a brand that, in a sense, is new, the best way to usually win over people is to let them try it. And if you
Right.
couldn't do that, that's kind of a difficult sell to have people have blind faith when they known the big boys for forever.
Right. Yeah. I've always said in the one of the ways I've been able to get legislators on our side is to point out that we make a $30 bottle of product, $30 up depending on the product, and that's not an impulse buy. People are not going to just say, I think I'll grab that bottle. I don't know what it is, but I'll grab it. We really needed to get it in their mouths, let them see for themselves if they liked it, and that's what's always sold our products. So it's very important to us.
Well, and two, I know you're kind of on the science committee as well. I'm guessing with your background as working in just industries that you have, and then also kind of being a home brewer, distiller, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just your way to kind of make sure you're giving back and helping out everyone? I mean, what's the thought process of continuing to kind of be on those type of committees?
Yeah, it was. I'm no longer on the science committee.
Okay.
I kind of ran out of time a couple of years ago on that, and figured there would be some better people serving on that committee, and so unfortunately, I'm not involved in that aspect anymore. But still, I'm here for people in the industry, and I frankly get calls quite a bit from other distilleries that are starting up, other distilleries that are trying to see some of the things we've done and want to know how to do them as well. So.
Well, and I know for you all, sourcing locally is a big thing. That's kind of one of the things that you guys hold near and dear. Why is that? And when you guys source locally, it's pretty much everything, and you guys make the whole gamut of liquors as well.
Yeah, so we try to source everything locally as much as possible. We live in this economy, our local economy, and our customers, I think, most of them get that and appreciate that. The fact that myself and my staff, we drink and dine in their establishments, so we try to keep it as local as possible. We are, for example, the bourbon and our rye whiskey, our local ingredients, local grains. So it's always been important to us from day one. Ingredients we can't get here, we still buy locally. There's a wonderful company called the Spice House that supplies our gin ingredient, a lot of our gin ingredients. Some of these things just don't grow in this part of the country or this part of the world even that we use in our gin, and but we still source it through a local supplier. It's important to us.
And I was going to say too, I'm guessing it's nice to one, where it's coming from, but two, are you able to work with them as well? Like if there's something you want planted, or even just kind of getting to know, because I know talking to folks, the seasons, if it's a rainy season, if it's a dry season, that impacts everything. So I'm guessing having that local connection helps you guys with everything you do there.
Absolutely. So we're very fortunate in that Wisconsin, grows every grain you need for a whiskey, and so it's fairly easy for us to source it here, and it's nice to think that we're supporting the farmer, we're supporting the company that's trucking it in, we're supporting the malt house. Just all of these are a little microcosm right within our own state, and we really strive to continue to support them. So I always joke, our orange liqueur, we get the oranges from the orange groves near Sheboygan, Wisconsin. So, uh, obviously not a real thing, but you know, sometimes people look at me for a moment and think, really?
Well, that's all the fun, and I think did I read correctly that do you guys also do a pumpkin spirit? Is that right?
Yeah, we do. So we started. This year is year 12. We work with a local brewery. Lakefront Brewery in Milwaukee makes what I think is the best pumpkin beer made in the country. It's actually a lager. It's delicious. It's Thomas Jefferson's recipe. And
So it's a classic.
basically they
It's a
make.
classic.
Oh yeah, they make a special batch for us every year, and we distill that, put it in barrels. This is batch 12. Um, in Germany, it'd be known as a beer schnapps. We tried to get approval from the TTB to call it that, and they wouldn't allow us to do that. But for whatever reasons, I have since seen some beer schnapps on the market. So I don't know how some people get that through and others don't, but it happens. But this Lakefront pumpkin lager is delicious, and it's a pumpkin spice thing. It's got a lot of pumpkin spice to it, and it's people look forward to it every fall. I mean, it's huge and makes an incredible old fashioned. But we've been doing it for, like I said, for 12 years, and every year I swear it gets better and better. So this year the barrels are all 5 and 6 year old barrels, so it's really getting some nice age on it as well.
Well, I was gonna say that's pretty awesome too. And I mean, is it fun to kind of, because again, you're working locally. You're working. I'm guessing the pumpkins come pretty local too, that they use, or at least whatever they're using. Again, I mean, how nice is it to work even locally with a brewery on a fun project like that?
Right. Right. No, it's awesome. It's they're probably the best known brewery in Milwaukee, and they do some incredible stuff. And we've been working with them for years on that and some other projects that we have going. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, and I also know sustainability is a big thing that you guys push. I mean, it even goes down to the fact that you all do almost everything in small batches. Can you talk a little bit about this sustainability and how that works for y'all and how that impacts everything you guys pretty much do?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is, again, locally sourcing. In fact, many of the grains that we use in our whiskey, we do our Still and Oak rye, for example, is 100% rye. It's actually organic grain. We don't have organic certification at the distillery, so we don't put that on the label, but the fact of the matter is it's organically grown near Dodgeville, Wisconsin. We use a mill about 20 miles from our distillery to mill that for us. We source, our bottles are currently sourced in the U.S., have been for many years, one of the few bottle plants that's in the U.S. You look at the path and the shipping of product in this country, of just about any product, and you might be talking about bottles from China, you might be talking about grain from the Dakotas, and being distilled and God knows where. I mean, you can, before you know it, you're transporting stuff all over the place, and it's not real sustainable. We also offer one of the, to my knowledge, only bottle reuse programs in the country. We literally buy our bottles back from our customers, both bars, retailers, and consumers. So we actually give our bar customers, retailers, half a buck a bottle. We buy them back, we pick them up, we clean them, we reuse them. Doesn't get much more sustainable than that. I mean, the fact of the matter is, even recycling glass takes a ridiculous amount of energy, and for us to be able to do this and still make it work for us somewhat profitably, and to ensure that we have a continued supply of glass, which right now is a really important thing, and a lot of places are having trouble with that, really makes it worthwhile, and has proven that it's a good program.
I was gonna say that to me sounds really cool. Did you ever get like a sideways look when you're like, hey, we want to buy our bottles back? Because I mean, no one does. I mean, people don't do that typically. You know,
Right.
they might
Right.
be able to reuse them in the sense of creating something different from them, but to have
Sure.
the person go, hey, I'll buy that back from you. I feel like
Yep.
that might have got a little sideways look, almost like the oranges in Sheboygan.
It's yeah, almost disbelief at first. What? You'll buy empty bottles from us? Absolutely, we will. They definitely, we get a little of that sideways look, but once we explain the program to them, it works out very well. And we've got many customers that have been doing it for many years now, and some customers are still trying to reach and talk about that program because they're frankly buying bottles of vodka from Europe that when you think about that whole path of that transportation path and how much energy that wastes, and it's kind of like, hey, maybe you ought to think about this option. So plus we help offset the cost of the product by buying the bottle back. So it's a win-win for both of us.
Well, and I guess too, my next question is obviously it's helpful to you all, but I think long term though, I mean, that's a big investment from y'all to do something like that. I mean, when you really think about the larger impact, I mean,
Sure.
I know it was a conscious decision, but I mean, sometimes those are easier said than done. I mean, was it difficult
Yeah.
to pull off kind of the whole package?
It was. I mean, I initially contacted our State Department of Revenue that regulates alcohol here because the regulations I saw for the state said that bottles had to be smashed or labels defaced. I said, hey, I'm a little concerned about this. We'd like to start this program. We think it would be good for us, good for our customers, good for the state in general. And we were greeted with, oh, yeah, no, you can do that. There's a little tiny subchapter that says that if you're, maintaining bottles for reuse purposes, that you can go ahead and do it. So we were fortunate that way. We did have to also get permission from the TTB, the federal regulators. Bottles is one of the things they use as an audit trail. They can tell by how many bottles you've bought, and how much you shipped out, whether you're being honest or not, with your numbers. So we had to get special permission from the feds as well on that.
I was going to say, it's always interesting to see the amount of kind of red tape that comes along with anything in alcohol, and like I said, it always kind of amazes me. You guys do a lot of different liquors, spirits, from the gin to the liqueurs. I mean, we talked about the pumpkin spirit. How is it balancing all of those? Because obviously some, once they're done, they're kind of ready to go. Bourbon's not that way, but how do you kind of balance all of that at once?
Well, I always, my for the last year, I probably look at all the SKUs that we have available, and I'm like, oh God, we have way too many products. It's hard to balance because the fact of the matter is, our time and our dollars, we can only market so much. And what do you devote those dollars to? What products? And when you try and spread that across, I mean, like right now, if you went in my tasting room, you'd probably see 26 different products on our shelf that we're selling. And anybody with some business savvy would probably say you're nuts. That's way too many. And I'd agree with them. We just have too many. But part of this business, part of the beauty of being small is we can do some very small batch things that the big guys can't. We make a ridiculous number of fruit brandies. They don't sell tremendously, but they taste delicious, and there's a few people that are onto that, and they'll come in looking for what we have and want to try different things. So when that happens, it's kind of rewarding, and it's like, oh, cool, somebody gets this. So it may only be 5 people, that get the brandy thing, but compared to thousands of people that get the bourbon thing, but it's still satisfying, and frankly, my staff enjoys coming up with these new things, and really, they really get off on, seeing what's going to happen and how it's going to work out. And so we have some great products in our line, and we have our pretty much typically any base spirit, bourbon, rye. We have a blended whiskey. We do some liqueurs. We do a coffee liqueur with a local roaster that is tremendous. We use their cold brew and basically produce this coffee liqueur. We do an orange liqueur. On the Wisconsin end of that, we do a cranberry liqueur and a Door County cherry liqueur as well. And they're delicious. They're natural. They're using real fruit in them, and there's just nothing else like that out there. And they've been selling really well.
Well, I was gonna say it's got that is the one beauty of being a craft distiller is you're nimble. You can be nimble, and basically you're your own boss. You don't got to go way up, and you literally are the boss. So I mean, if you want to do something, you guys can go. Hey, we're doing it. Another one that I found interesting was the bottled and bond gin. Like, how did that come about? Like, I feel like that's just you were like, hey, wait, we can do this, and you did it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We were producing a barrel reserve gin for a very long time because we could not say barrel aged gin. That was the TTB would not allow that label because they didn't recognize gin as a product that was barrel aged. But if we called it barrel reserve, they were okay with that. So we produced that for a very long time, and that's been very popular, and it's pretty freaking delicious. And we had some stock that was getting up near 4 years old when the TTB last spring announced that, oh, guess what? We're now going to allow barrel-aged gins, and we're also going to allow the term bottled and bond to not just be used for whiskey, but be able to be used for other products as well. So, I think my on-staff marketing guy Ross said, we got to come out with the first bottled and bond gin in America, and so we did. We applied for that. We applied for that label and received it, and I think came out with it like within a week of when the feds legalized the whole bottle and bond for gin.
I was gonna say, I mean that's got to be cool. I mean that's got to be fun to have that. I mean that's a thing that you can tell everyone. I mean people like it. I mean it's not just a made up story. It's a good story and it's a true story. Like I mean that's a great starting conversation.
Yeah. We try to do that. We did that with absinthe too. I think we ended up being about the third distillery in the U.S. To produce absinthe after the ban was lifted in 2007. Our biggest problem was getting our label approved. The government was being very particular in what they were going to allow. They didn't want any label that implied, some sort of hallucinatory, side effect, which, part of our marketing is to dispel the myths of absinthe, and there is no hallucinatory side effect unless you drink too much, in which case it's just an alcohol side effect.
I was going to say, that's everything.
Yeah.
Well, and, too, when you have, these types of products, you mentioned the kind of the cherry liqueur, the orange liqueur, gin, everything. That leads perfectly to making some cocktails, and I'm guessing that's something that you all enjoy and have probably enjoyed seeing the trend of people doing that more often as well.
Yeah, that's honestly a big part of our marketing. We have a tasting room. It's open 7 days a week. We do tours 7 days a week, and a big part of that is the cocktail menu that we have in the tasting room. It gives people an opportunity to try any of our spirits in a cocktail suggested by our staff. We have a ridiculously well-trained staff. All our bartenders in the tasting room also do tours, so they're very knowledgeable on our processes. But they can, if you come in and you say, I'm looking for a cocktail, maybe something a little bitter, got this character to it, they can generally come up with something pretty quick, and they do a really, really good job of it.
Well, and two, I feel like when you have the tasting room and you have a knowledgeable staff like that, I think as I've learned with cocktails, we do a cocktail quickie here every week. I try to keep it pretty simple because, it's not
Yeah.
like all of us are the experts, but,
Right.
when you can break down those barriers and show them what you can do with a liqueur and, or a gin and show them and go, hey, it's not that difficult. That's got to be rewarding in and of itself as well.
Absolutely, and our philosophy is always keep it simple. One of my favorite cocktails is our whiskey with a little of our orange liqueur in it and some bitters. I mean, it's incredibly good, incredibly simple. There's one part of the industry that wants to push cocktails that are very complex. But the fact of the matter, how many bars have the time, to produce a 6-ingredient cocktail? You can make some incredibly good stuff with 2 or 3 products. Hell, whiskey and ice cubes work great for me. So there's lots of we try to our customer base appreciates simplicity. I think consumers do too. I mean, it's fun to watch a bartender make a incredibly complex cocktail, but guess what? When that one's done and you got to wait another 15 minutes to get the next, it gets to be an uncomfortable wait. So we try to we offer training to our bar customers for their staff, and we're always about simplicity and just tasting the spirit.
Well, and I'm guessing too. Obviously, with the pandemic, things change everything. I'm sure that hurt bar sales because I'm sure that made up a decent part of the business. But at the same time, it offers that other side, the at-home bar. I mean, what have you seen? Being in business for almost 20 years now. I mean, how have things changed in that time?
Well, people have definitely the cocktail culture has definitely caught hold of a lot of people. Distilled spirits continue to grow every year. They're essentially taking market share from wine and beer to some extent because there's frankly so much you can do with spirits. It's not a one-trick pony. You can do an endless amount of mixology to create an incredible cocktail. The latest trend, of course, being seltzers. It's interesting when you look at the stats. It's not so much taking market share from spirits either. It's taking market share from beer. So people are interested in these seltzers because it's a transition, and that's how I look at it. People are going from drinking beer to I can get something with a little mix of flavors in it that I couldn't get in beer, and frankly, I think it's setting them up to be our customers in the future as well. So there's just so much more you can do with spirits.
Well, and folks, if you want, I even did a seltzer-based cocktail. I've done a couple. Did one with whiskey.
Yeah.
It was weird, but it was okay. It was okay.
Hey, my favorite cocktails drink, like I said, are very simple. I love seltzer with like our citrus honey vodka. It's just naturally flavored and ridiculously low calorie, 0 carbs. It's just it's and when you compare that to a can of something, the calorie count isn't even close. I mean, you can make ridiculously low calorie, 0 carb cocktails that taste incredible, and they're natural. They use fruit in them. So.
Well, I was thinking that the other day, literally, like a seltzer is just a liqueur, very watered down liqueur, but it's a spirit in a sense. It's got fruit juice, and it tastes good to some, not all. But I also wanted to ask you this because I know when you kind of got into this, you did some home brew. I don't think everyone loved the home brew or the home distillate, if I remember reading correctly. Do you still ever get to do that, or have they pretty much forbidden you from touching any of the equipment there?
No, I'm still allowed. I actually spend more time on a test still doing experiments than on these guys behind me. They'll push me out of the way and say, "Get out of the way. We got to make something real here. Come on." But I do get to play with the test still and work on some interesting things. So. And I do that when I get some free time. I try to do
I was
that
gonna
as
say,
much as I can.
the little bit that you do get, I'm sure, because I'm sure
Yeah.
with everything going on these days, you're a very busy guy. With that said, kind of what's next for y'all? I mean, like, if someone's interested, I mean, and the Great Lakes Distillery, obviously they can come visit y'all in Milwaukee,
Yeah.
but where can they get it? And
Yep.
how, and then obviously what's the future hold?
Yeah, well, our products are right now only available in Wisconsin. There was a time we were in 26 states. The unfortunately, the distribution of alcohol in this country is not very helpful to small producers. We kind of decided after several years of some national distribution that we weren't making any more money, and we were working our asses off, and said, screw it, let's just pull it back to Wisconsin. So we're only available in Wisconsin now, and future, honestly doesn't really have any distribution outside of Wisconsin on it. There's two things that I hope happen. One, the ability to do direct ship, which would be tremendous to small producers such as ourselves. And then just, again, expanding our production line. We'd love to do some Amaros. We've been working on some for several years. We're just not ready to bottle them yet. And that's what the future holds for us.
Well, and then for you, because obviously, I mean, you've started one company, you've done another now. Are you getting the itch again, or are you pretty satisfied with Great Lakes and all the different challenges that it poses?
This is the best job I've ever had in my life. The neat thing is, if I'm ever having a rough day or feeling a little down, I just walk out in our tasting room and there's people out there having a great time, and they're like, "Oh my God, these spirits are great," and it's a huge ego boost, and it keeps me going. So after 17 years of this, I'm really still very happy and go home with a smile on my face every night.
Well, I was gonna say that's key, and just the Still and Oak that we've tasted kind of throughout. If they're all like this, I can see why everyone's got a smile on their face. And as I tell people, I said this last episode, I'm not just saying that because you're on here. I mean that it's a really unique flavor profile. Kind of like you guys said, you do a unique recipe, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what else you guys do. Well, I mean, I know you guys do a lot of stuff. I can't wait for myself to see that at some
Yeah.
point in time, because, like I said, it was very, very enjoyable.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
And we appreciate you, Guy. Remember, follow us on all of our social media at Hop Spirits, all one word: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. We're also on YouTube, and you can check us out at hopspirits.com. Guy, thanks again for joining us.